you for staying. I know it's been a long week, so I appreciate seeing some lovely faces in the audience here today. Today we're going to be talking about ArcGIS apps, enhancing accessibility and localization. My name is Kitty Hurley, and I'm a product engineer on the CalSite team. I'm here with Kevin.
Hi, my name is Kevin Gonzago. I'm a product engineer for the developer experience team.
And we also have Isaac as well.
Hi, I'm Isaac Braun. I am another product engineer on the CalSite design system team.
Awesome. Let's get started. All right, so today we have a friend. His name is Steve. He will be joining us. He is on all of our slides, and we have a fun game for folks. If you can see how many fun facts Steve has and name how many times he appears, that could be part of our discussion later on. He's got some great fun facts about squirrels. So today we're going to be talking about the goal and purpose of the project. We're going to talk about process and architecture. We're going to talk also about the accessibility that's innate within ArcGIS apps. And then we're going to talk about some survey configuration to set up accessibility and how you can boost accessibility into your solutions. And then we're going to be talking about automation and some further discussion to consider as part of your designs. All right, so let's dive into the goal and purpose. So, squirrels. That's what we're here to talk about today. So one of the fun things that I've encountered in Minnesota is the eastern gray squirrel has morphs that are available to them. So there are white morphs, which are different than albino, and black morphs. And also, as folks may see, there's black morphs with a white tail. Fun fact, that is real. I did not AI that. That is a real squirrel. So I really wanted to map our furry friends, but I also wanted to crowdsource this project. And also, because I have colleagues that are also working on this, wanted to also account for different languages. And so that's part of our project. So why accessibility and localization? Well, the first thing is it's just the right thing to do. We're going to account for more inclusive design. We're going to have a lot more support for more audiences as we're considering accessibility and localization. So it removes that barrier for access, allowing access regardless of ability, and offers greater usability to everyone. But we're also adapting to local and cultural standards. So we have that expected experience, especially when it comes to internationalization, where there's an expected experience when it comes to like date format, for example. So we'll be talking about that today. We'll also be offering the same content across languages, and then also how we can deliver the same content across languages through automation. All right, so what we're gonna work towards today is we have a dashboard that we're sharing with all of our crowdsourced friends. And so this is showing that Spanish translation that we're going to be accounting for, even though all of the data is collected in English. So we're able to automate that process, and we'll talk through how we can make this happen without making another dashboard. So this is using one dashboard and accounting for multiple locales. All right, so let's talk about the process and architecture of the project. So this was me, obviously, a couple of days ago, collecting all of the data on squirrels. And it took a long time. It took over 30 minutes every day to collect these data points. I was collecting them out in the fields, I was coming back and trying to change all of the different intricacies. I had to convert images from my phone to a PNG file to make sure it was loading in to Map Viewer accurately. I had to account for internationalization, trying to translate all of the content from English to Spanish. And then I also had to make sure that all of the photos had an alt text. And so doing all of that took a lot of time. And so that's where my friend Kevin came in and said, "What are you doing?"
Okay, so that's pretty much it. I mean, basically, I just asked her, why are you doing this manual process? So what we did was we reduced the time that it took from 30 minutes or 20 minutes or so down to roughly 2 minutes. So this is an updated architecture that really highlights where the entry points are for users. So in this case, it would be Kitty. Using the Survey123 app, which is the data collection aspect of it. And then on the client side, to the right side of the diagram itself, is you have the dashboard, which is the visualization component of the scroll data. Now, from the back end, we know that Survey123 is supported by a hosted feature service that is within ArcGIS Online. So we're utilizing the webhook for listening to the onCreate feature, so which means whenever a squirrel is logged through Survey123, the webhook then disseminates that information to Microsoft Power Automate, which we created a flow to then call an ArcGIS Notebook, which was converted to a web tool to do the translation of the alt text, and write it back to the hosted feature service, which then hydrates the dashboard. So I know there's a lot there, but throughout the session, we're going to highlight a lot of these components in this new project architecture.
Awesome. So we'll go through that process, but first we want to talk about the accessibility that's innate in all of the products that we talked about. So first, when it comes to Survey123, there is structure there through the inputs where there's a named role, state, and value, so that you can understand on each of the different parts of the survey what is being encountered. So it gives interaction with the UI for assistive technologies. And that's where the status is also communicated back to assistive technologies as they're interacting with that form. And then there's also required field logic. In our case in particular, we're going to be using it for conditional note requirements, so that if a photo is attached, we're going to require a note. So having that ability and then being able to convert that status over makes it really seamless for the user to know what's required and when. This also offers a lot of great usability. As part of that, supporting cognitive users, it is ease of use, and then it has that greater access to individuals. As far as Map Viewer underneath it uses Calcite, which has accessibility in mind, so it offers keyboard navigation throughout all of the elements. You can get the context through the element labels that are provided, and then you can also have further customization through the solutions that you're building. And as far as dashboards, there's color theme contrast that's available. They have an enhanced contrast theme that's available. You can also do your own customized theme, and then there's also additional settings. So as you're configuring those different colors, then you can see what the contrast would be, and it'll tell you if it's a level A, AA, or AAA, and where that falls on the spectrum for WCAG criteria. There's also element labeling, which we'll also show later on in the slides. And there's some keyboard navigation that makes it really easy to navigate through all those different widgets within the dashboard. Multiple visualization elements that are available, so you can account for different scenarios, whether you want to show squirrels in a table, in a map, to kind of show all of your data and make sure that it's present and you're giving all of that context to your user. And then we'll talk about this in a later slide as well, but it supports locales. So just based on a URL parameter, so you don't have to create multiple dashboards, you can have one dashboard that then goes out and grabs all of that information using some arcade expressions to make sure that everything gets translated, so you only have the one dashboard to maintain. And so that is supported through the dashboard headings and then the indicator elements using Arcade. All right, so let's get into the survey configuration. So this setup is configured via Survey123, and it is crowdsourced, so it's available. It's a public collection, so anybody can go out to it. And it's now, as Kevin mentioned, it's using a hosted feature service using ArcGIS Online. But we also picked Survey123, but we wanted to also acknowledge that there are additional products that could be considered as part of your stack if you're creating your own solutions, such as ArcGIS field maps. Anything you want to add to that one?
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect. So what did that field collection look like? So we wanted to set up domains, so it makes it a lot easier to have those data records. So in this case, for the morph color, I'm only collecting black and white morphs. We don't really care about the grays. Unfortunately, they're just not important. So they're excluded from this. But we also have the observation types. So in the case if I'm going on a walk and finding the squirrels, or if it's a window, through a car or through a house. And then the date and time is populated. It gives the current date, but you can always go back in time, because obviously I have friends that send me these observations as well, so I can go back and add those in as well for them. We also have photos, which are optional, and then notes, which are optional unless a photo is provided, and then that field becomes required. And so let's see what that looks like. So as we do a collection, we get that data point, and we can switch between the different morphs. There is our black squirrel sighting, and because now we've added in that image, the notes is required, so we have to add in that text, so we have that alternative text that can then be attached to that squirrel. So as we're entering it in, you get to see all my great spelling. It's fabulous, you're welcome. And then we hit enter, and the data is sent and shipped out. All right, so as you're continuing to build these solutions, some of the considerations that you can make. So now we have our data points in, but as folks are aware, when you're working in Map Viewer, you just get the data points. So how can you make those data points pop? How can you make those changes to your base map to make sure that your data is getting more contrast? And so we're going to talk through what some of that looks like, but also the data underneath, the underlying data, so the pop-ups as well. So some base map considerations using the contrast. We're also going to talk about the reference labels, and then the symbology for the squirrels, and also to highlight some of our recent observations using flashing, and then the pop-ups using arcade expressions. So as we're doing those considerations, we want to add pop to those squirrels, providing contrast between that data and that base layer, and then the dynamic pop-up. So this is where the magic is happening with Arcade, so we can translate all of the content from English to Spanish while just using the one pop-up. We have everything in one web map, so then it translates over to our dashboard. And then it's offering support to those different locales where we can format those dates and also provide alternative text where present. All right, so first, going to the base map. So one of the things that by default, when you're working with Map Viewer, as folks are probably aware, the light gray, if you select the light gray canvas, it comes with the reference layer. And one of the things in this case is we really want that point data to be highlighted. So in this case, I disabled that reference layer so that we can really see those points really pop. Next, because we don't want that base map to have as much visual appeal to it, so added in a very muted green color to make it seem even less prominent and to really add that pop to our data. And so just adding that in. And then one of the really great features that Map Viewer offers is the ability to do some different changes in the appearance. So in this case, I added blending and multiply to make it even more muted as well. So now if we get into the squirrels, this is very important. We need our squirrel symbol. So we've added in our squirrel symbol. We have our white and black morph that's selected. And we can also display what we think is more prominent in the map. In this case, the white are a little bit more rare, so really wanted them to pop out first in case there are white morph sightings with the black morph sightings, so they get to be higher in that value order. We also are gonna rotate them just a bit because squirrels don't really just hang by themselves. They like to hang on trees and do really cool things. So let's add some rotation to them. And then also one of the things to make it even more prominent is we can add some effects. So in this case, added that drop shadow to really highlight them. So again, we have that muted base map, and now we're adding even more context, even more contrast to that squirrel. And so this is what that looks like all together. So we have that muted base map layer and then those squirrels really popping out on the map, but still getting some context of where they are on the map for us. Awesome, so now let's talk about that data that's underneath them. So those pop-ups. So You can see that default pop-up folks are probably familiar with, where there's a lot of different information that's presented with the pop-up, but it's not super useful. It's really hard to navigate through. So how can we make it so it looks easier to read, easier to understand, and also has consistency and offers more support across locales? So we're gonna add some field labeling. We're gonna use arcade expressions. We're gonna also display all of the data into a data table so that it can be accessed more by assistive technologies. And then we're gonna expose that alt text with an image if it's present, and then have that language-aware content that's available. And so what that looks like is we get to use the arcade get environment function, where we can go out and grab that locale. So in this case, if it's set to Spanish, then we can return the Spanish version of the name for the black morph or white morph, depending on the point that was collected. So that pop-up title has that different title depending on what language is being set. And then in this case, it does that IAF statement, so it does that either or. So it makes it easier for us to code. And so this is an example of what the entire pop-up looks like. So that other screenshot was using that title. So this is the rest of the body of that pop-up content. So it's going out, grabbing that morph type. And then this is where the internationalization comes in. So that date time that we were talking about, having that different formatting being present if it's English or Spanish. And so we can use that text function to then change the way it's displayed and then fit the locale, where in English we're gonna have a different look and feel versus in Spanish. So we're able to do that dynamically. And then on this other example here on the right, we're able to determine if a photo is present using the isEmpty and hasValue functions. And then based on that, we can set that different value in, and depending on if it's in English or Spanish, have that information be translated. And then finally, this is the most important step as well. So after we've decoded all those headings and those values, we bring them together and put them in a table format in that pop-up, so then it can be displayed, it can be discerned by assistive technologies. And so everything is dynamic from all of our previous work, and it's able to be interpreted by those assistive technologies. And so this is that final product, what it looks like in those pop-ups. So the top image for the black morph sighting here, that's showing the English version. And then you can see that same pop-up being displayed in Spanish as well. And then if you look at the two also that are side by side, it shows that not only is it being interpreted within the pop-up, but also in Map Viewer itself. It's taking all of those actions, so the table, edit, get directions, and zoom to are all also provided and discerned in Spanish in this case as well. And it might be a little tough to see for folks in the room, but I have a title attribute on both of these images, so you can see what that alt text looks like in both Spanish and English to see that conversion happening, that's going on behind the scenes as well. And then what's really great about this is that we're not duplicating the data. A lot of times folks might be having a different data set, or they might be just kind of doing a lot of extra work. And in this case, we're just using the underlying data, and we're using it readily. So we're not having to duplicate work. We're not having to redo our work again. And then this is, again, based on browser-based locale detection. And then we'll show this in a little bit using URL parameter overrides and date and number formatting.
Would you mind? I just have one comment on this.
Yeah.
So the idea here is data duplication. It's also, you're not necessarily duplicating your dashboard, and that's the critical component for the slide here. Data duplication is obviously one of the things that we try to avoid. That same aspect does apply to dashboards as well.
Exactly. Thank you. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
Okay, so kind of further along the assistive technology support within dashboards itself. So there's a lot of built-in capabilities within dashboard that does offer that type of assistive technology. So in this example, what we're looking at is the accessibility that is part of the chart element that we utilize within the dashboard itself. So we're adding a clear description for the chart so it communicates the visualization aspect of it. Right? The goal here is to provide just meaningful context that is beyond just for the visual element. So by adding accessible names and supporting data tables, we can definitely make the dashboards easier to interpret for a wider range of audience. So now, taking it a step further in regards to the ARIA labels, thank you, applied to the chart element that really describes a visual representation of each of these text or whatnot, but it really does allow the assistive technologies like screen readers to announce meaningful context instead of just saying chart or widget, right? So it does, like for example, in this case here, number of squirrel morph observations and days of collection per month. So that itself will come across with a screen reader. So the one thing that I want to show here is, I'm gonna pause for a bit and switch over to the dashboard itself. So we're looking at the English version of the dashboard. And you can see that once I select a feature, pop-up is displayed, allowing me to interrogate the attributes in English. Now, we switch over to the Spanish version of the dashboard, selecting that same particular feature. It is visualized or rendered in Spanish, right? And all you had to do was adding in this hashtag locale equals Spanish. In this case, it's ES. So the idea of switching back and forth between two locales with the same dashboard, that is the powerful aspect of within the dashboard capability. Okay, so we're going to take a look at one of the elements here, and in this case, we're going to see review or analyze the expression that was used to really support the recent squirrels table. So what we're looking at here is an expression that really drives that table, and now Kitty alluded to it in previous slides that everything really starts from the get environment locale. That's where dashboard offers you that capability of interrogating which locale you're in, allowing you to then apply the conditional aspects of how do you then render the data appropriately, right? I'm not going to go down the list of code itself, but everything really starts from that method, get environment locale, right? And then you can return the appropriate information depending on the locale itself. Okay, so let's really dive into the automation side of things here. Now, the new project solution the architecture of the project solution that we implemented, it really understanding that we have to remove barriers to access, right? So it really comes down to how do we get from point A to point B and just understand how we can get access, how we can make things easier in terms of accessibility. Now, also support assistive technologies and really adaptive to cultural expectations and whatnot. So by embedding these capabilities directly into the workflow, we can really deliver some of the content across languages without really duplicating data. And that's what we mentioned early in the past slides. Okay, so I mentioned in the solution architecture that we utilize the webhook of that hosted feature service that really supports the Survey123 form. So the reason why we are using that webhook is because it's an event that really initiates the once a squirrel is logged, that is captured using survey, that is then using that webhook, it then sends information off to the Power Automate. And that orchestration within Power Automate itself, it listens, it calls the notebook, and then it also delivers a message to Microsoft Teams channel just as a notification that squirrel has been logged and the translation of it has been processed. So now let's talk about the notebook, right? The notebook itself does quite a lot. I would say it was the glue that really brings everything together. So we use the Google Translate API to do the translation from English to Spanish. And anything that really comes down to attribute updates, the notebook also handles that. Validation from alt text as well as locale formatting, everything really is handled by the notebook. So essentially, the notebook really drives this project solution. Okay, so now comes a quick demonstration of how we are going to capture a squirrel and how it's going to be disseminated via Teams and show in our dashboards.
All right, so we have a squirrel that entered the convention center. Oh, look at that. Better map that guy. Very nice, thank you, Isaac. At the convention center, I'm just entering a nice alt text. All right, so now we have our logged squirrel. And I'm gonna bring up our dashboard. Actually, we're gonna bring up Teams, and we're gonna see how long it takes to see our squirrel entry come in. Hopefully pretty quick. Or I can show the dashboard while we wait.
Yeah, so what's happening now is that from the webhook, it listens to, I just want to reiterate here, is that the onCreate feature event is fired off from the webhook to Power Automate. It listens to it, and then it's going to initiate the notebook once that log squirrel is in queue, right? So it usually takes anywhere between 1 minute to 2 minutes. So it's not like we're doing a song and dance here, but it is definitely en route to it.
So we'll give it a little bit of time to cook there. In the meantime, we'll just check out our map because we are in Palm Springs, so we wanted to change. Oh, there is our squirrel. Look at that. And then I'm going to, so that is the English version, and here is the Spanish version. Let's go back to Teams. Looks like it's not recorded yet, but we do have it in our map. So here's that feature. Look at our lovely squirrel friend. Very nice. But I don't think we have that translation yet. Oh, there it is. It has just popped up in our feed. So if we look over at our Spanish dashboard here, I'm just going to resituate us back to Palm Springs. And here we are. And here we have our translation present for us, even though we entered our record in English. So all of that information, we have our date being loaded in, the different type of morph, the type of collection that took place, and then the photo with that alt text taking place. All right, further discussion.
Yep.
Hand it back to Kevin for that.
Hold on. Yeah, further discussion. Okay, let's really talk about the design considerations with this project solution here. Let's really talk about the table widget support, right? So in its current format, the table headers and the dashboard title itself requires additional manual input. So that's one of the things that the dashboard team is aware of, and so that's one of the reasons why we had to inject additional conditions to apply for a specific locale via Arcade. Now, webhooks. Survey123 is coming out with its next generation. So that is going to be available towards the end of March. Now, that's great, but the unfortunate aspect about this is that it does not support webhooks. So what we've done is that for this solution, previous from the legacy aspect of Survey123 is that you could listen for a survey that has been submitted. Now, with next generation, that is no longer supported. So what we had to do was we had to listen to the onCreate feature event that is emitted from the feature service itself. So switching that to that capability allows us to still listen to any feature, or in this case, any scrolls that has been logged. So if we went from Survey123 legacy to next generation, it'll still work. So let's really talk about webhooks, Power Automate, and this is the interesting aspect is that the payload that is sent from this webhook to Power Automate needs to be simple. It's as simple as, hey, a feature has been created. Let's initiate this process now. You don't want to send a very complex payload like what the geometry of the feature, any other attributes that could, let's say, have a blob field. In this case, we're utilizing the attachment photo. So we don't want to send anything that is overly complicated because it may be bogged down in transit to Microsoft Power Automate, or it won't show up at all. So keep your payload as simple as possible, which kind of drives that second to last point is why Power Automate, right? Given that there's some limitations. Power Automate, Esri has a lot of these pre-built workflows in there. So for us to use Power Automate, it just makes a lot of sense because all we had to do was configure the connection to ArcGIS Online to your organization, select that feature service that has the webhook supported and enabled, and it just does its magic and able to connect webhook to Power Automate without any other further configuration. Now, lastly, when it says vetting translated alt text, I mentioned that the notebook utilizes the Google Translate API. So there isn't really a vetting process in terms of what was translated, right? It does require a human element to it. But in this case, Kitty would log as squirrel and keep things as locale agnostic, so the translation would be easier from English to Spanish and vice versa. So the one thing about this new architecture is that it can be applied to various aspects of other industries as well. So squirrel can be more than just squirrel. It can be environmental monitoring all the way down to a citizen science-based type of solution. So the one thing that we're probably also thinking is that, well, if we're using Notebook to automate our locales, well, in this case, it's very specific to Spanish. Can it accommodate for other locales as well to broaden not only just for Spanish, but perhaps French, German, or whatnot, right? So the one thing that I want to show here is, don't worry about this. I'm not going to run it because this will definitely affect our dashboard. But the one thing that I do want to, oh, I'm sorry, is it not? Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. I thought by switching over. There we go, thank you. So this notebook, what it does in a very high level is that it gets access to your dashboard item, dumps it in JSON format, interrogates where in this case, we want to update the table, the title of a table element, and do the proper translation, and then save it back to that item. So that it is doable, right? But the one thing that we have to do here is that you're essentially updating your JSON all the time. So it is, again, I want to stress that it is doable, but it will require a little bit of regular expression to accommodate for various locales. So I just want to show y'all that it is this notebook does get a handle of table widget. It does update the locale of it, depending on which locale you specify. In this case, I'm still Spanish, but it does offer French and German. But again, it's just one element. Let's say you have several elements in it, like a chart or an indicator or gauge. So you're looking at possibly 3 or 4 times the amount of code that you have to accommodate. So buyer beware at this point. Okay, so consider accessibility throughout the process, and I really want to stress here is that you don't want to retrofit accessibility. It never should be an afterthought. We should always have this type of discussion from the get-go of your project solution here. So, if possible, think of it during possibly even the planning, as early as the planning and design phase of your app, right? Don't rely on manual translations. In this case, Kitty was, in her previous workflow, it wasn't a real-time solution, but we are using the Google API for translation, so we can immediately translate, and it does become a near real-time solution. Lastly, automate responsibly. Right? Sometimes automation does work. It makes things a lot easier. We do want to have the easy button. But just be aware that, especially from the Google Translate API, the vetting process needs to exist as well. So just be mindful about that. So again, design for everyone, because that is how we scale. So, do you want to take this?
I can open this.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, awesome. So all of the resources that we shared today, we want this to be reusable. So as Kevin mentioned, there's multiple different avenues that you can add to your own workflows. And so our esriurl.com squirrels will take you out to our GitHub repo, where we have all of those arcade expressions that list from both the dashboards, for the indicators, for the tables, but also for those pop-ups as well. So you can get at all of those different arcade expressions. And we also have a README file that also includes what each does and then links out to those as well. And then we also have listed under the Python folder that file that goes out to the notebook as well. So you can incorporate it, change it to fit your needs. In this case, I believe we have the item ID empty string for you. So that would be something you would interchange with and just fit to your needs. You would have to make some adjustments and tweaks to fit to the fields that you're encountering or using for your own use. And then lastly, we also have a link to all of the different aspects that we showed here today, the Survey123 map viewer, both in English and Spanish, so you can see those different locales taking place with those pop-ups, the dashboards for the English and Spanish, the notebook that Kevin showed, and then we just have some links out to both the hosted feature layer webhook documentation and the Microsoft Power Automate ArcGIS connector documentation as well. So hopefully that can be a great resource for folks as you're implementing your solutions. Do you have additionals there?
No, you pretty much covered everything.
Awesome. And then we also, because we did use a lot of Arcade, I wanted to just link to 2 great blog posts. They're a couple years old, but they still hold true. Talks about a couple different really great expressions that you can use to accommodate more audiences, just using all those really great resources. So hopefully those short URLs will be useful to folks. And then, as always, I'm sure you guys are probably sick of seeing this slide this week, but we would love to hear your feedback on how we did, things to improve if you like this session, if we should offer it again, and just any feedback that you have for us. We'd love to hear it. And I think that's all we have, so we'll take any questions.
We're open to questions. Sure.
So I'm kind of zeroing in on a detail here, so apologize for that. But I noticed it was the first time I'd seen it, the option to add an ARIA label in for, I believe it was a chart in your dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
So the form field was listed as accessible name, and I think that an accessible name can also be like visual text, figure captions, and things of that nature. Also, you don't necessarily want your ARIA label to like repeat things. You want it to be informative to the user. So I guess first of all, first question is the accessible name always an ARIA label? And if so, do you have any general recommendations for users of these tools of how to construct good and useful ARIA labels?
Can you repeat it?
I'll try to repeat that question concisely. So I may need to hear it a second time. But the first question was adding the ARIA label to the chart within the dashboard. I apologize, could you repeat that last bit?
Yeah, so first question was is the accessible name always an ARIA label? And then the second question was, do you have advice for constructing good and helpful ARIA labels?
Perfect. So first question is the accessible name always an ARIA label? And then secondly, do you have advice for constructing good accessible names?
Yes, great question. So yes, in this case, at least for now, it is always an ARIA label. And then as far as that additional, like, how should you configure it? It's really going to depend on the use case, but to your point of the repetition, definitely want to avoid any repetition because you still have that header. So it's providing additional context that maybe like somebody who isn't sighted would be able to get at. So it would be enhancing that experience is what would be the general recommendation, but it's going to vary depending on the solution that you're building. Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ooh, excuse me. Yes.
I was wondering, so like your survey's in English, and so obviously if you have multiple translations of your survey, how might that influence like your webhook and your translation? Because like right now we're just doing English to other languages, but what if they're entering in English to Spanish, some other language, and like how might that work?
That's a great question. Yeah. So to repeat, if the Survey123 app is available in different languages and the information is input in different languages, how would that affect the webhook and the process when it's only translating to Spanish?
That's a version 2 in our case. No, but in all honesty, you're absolutely right. It's English to Spanish right now, right? And how do we accommodate for Spanish to English, right? For example, and it really comes down to we're going to have to update the notebook accordingly. So we're going to have to do a little bit more interrogation of information that's coming in to the notebook and how we go about translating, right? So there's going to be a lot more of a intricacies around the translation, identifying which locale is coming in. And this is where you're probably going to have to understand the workflow, right? So if it's Spanish to English, we're going to have to accommodate for that. So to try to expand beyond that and make it a little bit more agnostic on both ends, it's definitely doable, but it's going to be a lot of querying. What locale am I? And what's the output locale? So it is doable, but it's going to take a lot of conditional formatting into it. But great question, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Second row.
So you showed up all the excited ones. So now like we've introduced for ArcGIS streamline. So in a survey, which you call it picture, and it's need to be automated. I need to be automated.
Great question. So to repeat, what would the process look like if you were to use ArcGIS field maps instead of Survey123 to be collecting that data with the process of converting the alt text and using the webhook to do so?
So actually, that's a good question as well, because let's actually start from why did we use Survey123, right? The reason why we went Survey is because of its simplicity. So it was easy to set up, it was easy to come up with a list of questions and to accommodate for that workflow. We felt that field maps was, because of additional bells and whistles with it, like a lot of the rules that you can apply to it was somewhat overkill. But I think if you do want to go that route of field maps, it is definitely doable. And I believe, don't correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I think there's also a feature service attached to it. If a feature service is attached to support the field maps forms, then the webhook capabilities afforded to you as well. So it does, the architecture that we showed you will be supported.
Awesome, thank you. Front row?
The local parameter in network works with experience builder also.
The question is, does the locale query parameter in the URL work with Experience Builder as well?
Yes, so instead of a hashtag at the very end, it is a question mark locale. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Over here, second row. Great question. So to repeat, we saw how we could change the language of the pop-up, but can we change the layer names or, apologize, I'm forgetting, the other elements of the map in the dashboard?
Oh, go ahead.
So are you talking about the layer names as in like the data source that really drives the pop-ups, or?
The data itself.
So Arcade is,
Like in the legend. Okay, I can answer.
no.
So it is a limitation. That was something that we did encounter. So that is something that we could work towards in the future, unless you had a different answer.
Well, I was going to say that depending on the profile that you're in, right? In this case, maybe a pop-up, right? There is nowhere to create a feature collection out of it, right? Getting a hold of that data source and then renaming it. So maybe on the greater sense of like creating a table where you can get a handle of your item, and then you can retrieve the features, and that's where you can actually return that feature collection as a feature data set object with all the names that you want, right? So in a pop-up, I don't think it's supported, but in a table, perhaps, it will be.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, not in like a legend either. So that would be, I don't know if that was what your question was getting at. Okay. So yeah, if you're doing it like in the dashboard, to Kevin's point,
Yeah.
you could, but if you're trying to do it at that level, that's a limitation.
Thank you. Over here in the front row.
I don't know if it's related to errors, but I noticed on the dashboard that the title was in English, was not Spanish, on the Spanish version, and also that the legend on the chart was like English as well as Spanish and some other elements. Is that a limitation, or is it both?
Great question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Repeat.
Yeah, just to repeat, the question is, they're noticing the title and some of the chart labels were either just in English or in both English and Spanish. Is that a limitation, or is there some other option there?
Yes, it is a limitation, and it has been brought to the dashboards team attention. If anyone would like it to be prioritized in the future, we would recommend reaching out to the dashboards team via community or Esri support to help prioritize. Great observation.
All right. Yes, back here.
Clarification, so when it translates it, and now you've got this sort of translated text, is that being like appended to like an alt text Spanish field in the data, or is it just hidden in the JSON to like pull as it needs?
Great question. So again, to repeat, is once the alt text is translated, is that being added to a new property in the JSON, or is it being hidden in some other way?
No, it's actually written to a new field in the feature layer. So you accommodate. So if you, getting back to your previous question, how would you accommodate for other locales? Then you would just tack on additional fields to accommodate for each of those locales.
It also goes into Kevin's point earlier, if you want to verify that that translation is accurate, then that also gives the capability to have everything in one spot, so it can be combed through further.
Awesome. We do have a question from the online audience. It says, I think Dashboards had a bug logged for not recognizing browser locale settings in the same way that Experience Builder or Map Viewer does. Do we know if that has been resolved? The workaround said to enforce it via URL parameters, but wondering if there's an update on that.
No update as that I know of, but we can definitely find out more given that the feature teams are here. So,
all right. Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions from the audience? Oh, yes. The question is there a way to have an AI assistant do the translation for you and plop the data back into the feature service?
that capability is not available right now within the notebook, right? And I have no idea when that is going to be available, unfortunately.
I think maybe like within the survey or the feature layer firing off the webhook, within itself, fires off a flow that's called the AI assistant or something like that.
So the webhook that is part of the feature service, you're saying that it should initiate an agent to perform the translation.
Maybe the word could would be better than should.
Yeah, I mean, that is another route, but at this point, a lot of times, what we try to do is we want to inject as much or go with the route as much as out-of-the-box solution as much as possible. And if we see a limitation or a gap, that's when we fill it in with an arcade expression, or in this case, as well as a notebook. So I know the AI is pretty much the craze right now. It would be lovely to add an agent to accommodate that task, but I don't think it's currently available within our ecosystem.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
One more question to clarify. So with the URL parameter, is kind of the expectation to get into that there's like maybe two links on a website that somebody is picking, or is that just like inherited from the browser based on their browser local settings, or what was sort of the expectation? Obviously, you wouldn't expect them to know to type that in.
Great question. So are users expected to navigate to two separate links to access the English or the Spanish using the query parameter, or is it detected from their browser settings?
Yeah, that is a great question. It is detected by browser settings, so that would be in both Map Viewer and in Dashboards. We're just showing it here because we didn't want to fumble through all of the changes, but yeah, that's a great question.
Awesome.
Yep, that's it.
Any other questions? I know I had a question. I know we've already done a great optimization from 30 minutes of manual process down to 2 minutes, but is there anything else that you would do to further improve the automation?
No, that's a great question, because we're always striving to improve the near real-time experience with our solution here. Should we get away from Power Automate, perhaps, right? Because a lot of times when you have a cloud flow that you've published, and if you don't use it over time, it does get stale. So then you would have to log in and reinitiate that flow, right? Do we have the time to do that all the time? No, you don't. Or another aspect would be, can we run a task to call that notebook? We can, but within ArcGIS Online, it does require credits. If you have ample amount of credits, then it's not a big problem. The third would be convert that notebook as a web tool, right? And then you can call it anywhere as well. But caveat there is that it is a credit consumption model as well. And then alternatively, can we call it from a Windows schedule task? That notebook that we then turn into a simple Python script that resides locally on your server. We can go that route as well. So I'm talking about various aspects of how do we accommodate for maybe some of the limitations of Power Automate, right? But the reason why we chose Power Automate is purely from the configuration aspect of it. It was relatively simple to connect to your organization, select that feature service, and behind the scenes, it does create that webhook listener. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
There seems like some great options there.
yeah.
Any other questions? Did anyone catch how many Steves were in the slides?
Yes. Close.
I'm sorry,
10.
someone said
We had,
12 it is.
well done.
Any favorite Steve facts? Okay. Well, thank you guys for making the time. I know it's been a long week, so appreciate y'all joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.